Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Leo. We're really happy you're here with us today.
Yeah, today feels cozy already. I don't know why. Maybe because we're talking about something soft, something personal.
Something that makes life a little warmer.
Exactly. Today we're talking about hobbies, the small things we do just because we like them.
Not for money, not because we have to, just because we want to.
I love that because sometimes hobbies are the only things that feel truly ours.
That's true. When life gets busy, hobbies are like small islands. You go there to breathe.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. You're already deep.
I try. But really, I think hobbies say a lot about who we are.
Yes, and maybe who we want to become.
So today we'll share our own hobbies, the good parts and also the hard parts.
Because hobbies are not always easy. Sometimes we stop. Sometimes we feel guilty. Sometimes we forget what we love.
And maybe you will see yourself in our stories.
If you enjoy these conversations, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue.
And now, let's talk about the small things that make life feel bigger.
You know, when I was a child, I had so many hobbies. I wanted to try everything. Drawing, dancing, reading, even writing little stories. My room was always messy because I had so many small projects.
That sounds nice. I can imagine little Sophie with crayons everywhere.
That was exactly me. But the strange thing is, when I became an adult, I slowly stopped doing those things.
Why do you think that happened?
I think life became serious. School, exams, work, responsibilities. I started to feel that hobbies were a waste of time. Like, if I wasn't improving my career or making money, I felt guilty.
I understand that feeling so well. It's like you always need to be productive.
Yes, and I started to measure my time. Is this useful? Is this important? And drawing didn't feel important anymore.
That makes me a little sad.
It makes me sad too, because when I stopped drawing, I also stopped feeling something. I didn't notice it at first, but I became more stressed, more tired, even on weekends.
I had a similar experience with music.
Really?
Yeah, I used to play the guitar when I was younger. Not very well, but I loved it. I would sit in my room and just play the same song again and again. It was my escape.
That sounds peaceful.
It was. But when I started working full-time, I told myself, I don't have time for this. My guitar stayed in the corner of my room. It collected dust.
That image is powerful. The guitar in the corner?
Every time I saw it, I felt a little guilty, like I was ignoring a part of myself.
Yes, that's exactly it. When we ignore our hobbies, we ignore a part of ourselves.
And sometimes we think it's normal. We say, this is adulthood.
But is it really?
I don't think so anymore.
When did you realize that?
It was one evening. I came home after a long day. I was tired, but not the normal tired. It was emotional tired. I sat on the sofa and just stared at my phone. I was scrolling for almost 1 hour.
I know that feeling too well.
And suddenly I thought, why am I doing this? I say I don't have time for guitar, but I have time to scroll.
That's honest.
It hurt a little because I understood that the problem was not time. It was energy and maybe courage.
Courage?
Yes, because hobbies make you feel vulnerable. When you play guitar, you hear your mistakes. When you draw, you see that it's not perfect. It's easier to scroll. No risk.
Wow, I never thought about that. Maybe I stopped drawing because I was afraid I wasn't good anymore.
Exactly.
When we are children, we don't care if we are good. We just enjoy it. But as adults, we compare. We judge ourselves.
And social media makes it worse. You see amazing artists, amazing musicians, and you think, why even try?
Yes, I remember once I opened Instagram and saw someone my age with beautiful paintings, and I closed my sketchbook. I felt small.
That's painful.
It is, but it's also common. Many people between 20 and 40 feel this pressure. We feel we need to be excellent or we should not start.
But hobbies are not about excellence.
They are about connection with yourself.
I like that.
After that period, I started to feel something missing in my life. I was working, meeting friends, doing normal things, but something was empty.
Was it creativity?
Yes, creativity and silence. Drawing gave me silence. When I draw, my mind slows down. I focus on lines, shapes, shadows. Time feels different.
That sounds like meditation.
It is, in a way, but I forgot that feeling. I thought I needed a vacation or a new job, but maybe I just needed my pencil.
Sometimes the solution is small.
Very small. And what about you? When you stopped playing guitar, what changed in you?
I became more restless. I didn't notice at first, but I started to complain more about work, about stress. I felt like life was only duties.
Only responsibilities.
Yes, and I started to think, is this it? Is this adult life? Just work and sleep?
That's a scary question.
It is, and I think many adults ask that quietly. They don't say it out loud, but they feel it.
I agree. And sometimes hobbies are the only thing that reminds us that we are more than our job.
Exactly. When I played guitar, I was not an employee. I was just Leo, a guy trying to play a song.
That sounds simple, but it's powerful.
It is, because in those moments, you don't think about salary, deadlines, or expectations. You just exist.
I miss that feeling too. Just existing, not proving.
So when was the first time you picked up your pencil again?
It took me a long time, almost 2 years. One Sunday afternoon, it was raining. I had nothing planned. I felt bored, and I saw my old sketchbook in a drawer.
Did you hesitate?
Yes, I actually touched it and put it back. I thought, what if I'm bad now? That thought was so strong.
That fear again.
Yes, but then I told myself, nobody will see it. It's just for you. And that sentence changed everything.
That's beautiful.
I opened it. The first drawing was terrible, really terrible.
Band?
I laughed. I didn't cry. I laughed because it felt real. It felt like meeting an old friend after a long time.
That moment must have been emotional.
It was. I realized I didn't need to be good. I just needed to be honest.
I think that's the key.
Maybe, but it was just the beginning, because starting again is easy for one day. The hard part is continuing.
Yes, continuing when life becomes busy again.
Exactly.
I understand that so deeply because starting again feels exciting and emotional, but continuing is where the real struggle begins, especially when the normal rhythm of life comes back with work emails, tired evenings, and all the small responsibilities that never seem to end.
Yes, that's exactly what happened to me. Because after that rainy Sunday, I felt inspired and calm and proud of myself. But then Monday came and suddenly I was tired again. And I told myself, I will draw tomorrow. And then tomorrow became next week.
That pattern is so familiar, and I think many adults live inside that pattern without even noticing it, because we are always waiting for the perfect moment when we will have enough energy, enough time, and the perfect mood.
But the perfect moment almost never comes, right? Life is always a little messy, a little noisy, a little busy.
Exactly. And I realized that if I waited until I felt completely relaxed and free, I would probably never touch my guitar again, because adulthood is not designed to give us empty spaces easily.
That's true. And I think one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that hobbies need big blocks of time, like 2 or 3 free hours, when in reality, maybe we just need 20 quiet minutes.
I love that you said that, because when I finally decided to try playing again, I made a small rule for myself, and the rule was very simple. I would play for only 10 minutes, even if I was tired, even if I didn't feel inspired, and even if I made mistakes.
Only 10 minutes?
Yes, because 10 minutes felt possible. And when something feels possible, it becomes less scary. And that small decision helped me remove the pressure of getting good or productive with my hobby.
That's really powerful because sometimes the problem is not the hobby itself, but the expectations we attach to it.
Exactly, because when I was younger, playing guitar was pure joy. But as an adult, I secretly wanted to improve fast, to learn impressive songs, to maybe even show people. And that hidden expectation made it heavy.
I feel the same with drawing, because when I started again, I noticed that I was already thinking about posting my drawings online, and I hadn't even enjoyed them privately yet.
That's such an honest confession.
It is, and it made me realize how much we live in front of an invisible audience, even when we are alone. And that invisible audience can steal the simple joy of doing something just for ourselves.
I think many people between 20 and 40 feel that invisible pressure, especially because we grew up with social media, where hobbies are often turned into side businesses or personal brands.
Yes, and there is nothing wrong with turning a hobby into a career. But sometimes it changes the feeling completely because what once was relaxing becomes another responsibility.
That's such an important point, because when everything becomes about growth, improvement, and results, we lose the slow, playful part of ourselves.
And I think that playful part is very important for mental health, even if we don't talk about it enough.
I agree, because when I started playing guitar again for those 10 minutes, I noticed something surprising. My stress level went down and my mind felt softer, almost like it had space to breathe.
Softer is such a beautiful word.
That's how it felt, like my thoughts were not fighting each other anymore. And even though my playing was not perfect, I felt connected to something simple and real.
I love that feeling of connection because when I draw, even if it's just a simple flower or a face, I feel like I am touching a quiet part of myself that is usually hidden under noise.
That quiet part is easy to ignore, especially when we are busy trying to build careers, relationships, and stable lives.
Yes, and sometimes we think hobbies are childish, like something we should leave behind when we become serious adults.
I used to believe that too, because I thought maturity meant focusing only on important things like money, planning, and success.
But now, when you look back, do you still believe that?
No, not at all, because I realized that without hobbies, my life started to feel flat, like everything was about survival and performance and nothing was about joy.
That word performance is so strong because sometimes we perform at work, we perform in social situations, and even in relationships. And hobbies are one of the few spaces where we can stop performing.
Exactly. And when I play guitar alone in my room, I am not trying to impress anyone. I am not trying to win anything, and that freedom is very healing.
I think many listeners might be thinking right now about a hobby they loved before, something they stopped doing because life became heavy.
Maybe it was painting, or dancing, or cooking, or writing in a journal, or even playing a sport.
And maybe they think it's too late to start again.
That thought is very common, especially in your 30s, because you start to compare yourself with people who have been practicing something for many years.
Yes, and comparison can be very cruel because it makes you forget that hobbies are not competitions.
I once met a man in his 40s who started learning the piano for the first time, and he told me that he felt embarrassed at the beginning because children were playing better than him.
That must have been uncomfortable.
It was, but he said something beautiful. He said, "I am not learning for them. I am learning for the child I used to be."
Wow, that's very emotional.
It touched me deeply because it reminded me that sometimes hobbies are a way to reconnect with younger versions of ourselves who had dreams and curiosity without fear.
I think that's why picking up my pencil again felt like meeting my younger self, the girl who didn't care about perfection and just enjoyed colors.
Do you feel that younger version of you when you draw now?
Sometimes, yes, especially when I forget about time and I realize that 1 hour passed and I didn't check my phone once, and that feels like a small victory.
That's such a modern victory, not checking your phone.
It is, and it shows how hobbies can protect our attention, which is very fragile today.
That's true, because our attention is always pulled in different directions, and hobbies require us to focus gently on one thing.
And that gentle focus can be very calming, especially after a long day full of information and noise.
I think the biggest lesson for me so far is that hobbies are not luxury activities for when everything else is perfect, but they are small, daily acts of care.
Acts of care for ourselves.
Yes, because when we make space for something we love, even for 10 minutes, we are telling ourselves that our joy matters.
And that message is very important, especially in a world that often measures our value by productivity.
Exactly. And maybe the real challenge is not finding time, but giving ourselves permission.
Permission to be imperfect, slow, and playful again.
Yes, and permission to enjoy something without turning it into a goal.
I think that's where the real struggle begins for many adults, because we are so used to setting goals that doing something without a goal feels almost uncomfortable.
I agree. And maybe that discomfort is something we need to sit with instead of running away from it.
That's true. And I think that's where my journey with drawing really started to change, when I stopped asking, how good am I? And started asking, how do I feel while doing this?
That question changes everything, because when you ask yourself how you feel instead of how good you are, you move from judgment to awareness, and awareness is much kinder than judgment.
Yes, and I noticed that when I focused on my feelings instead of the result, I started to enjoy the small details again, like the sound of the pencil on paper or the way shadows slowly appear when I add more lines.
That sounds very mindful, almost like you are fully inside the moment instead of thinking about the future.
Exactly. And that was new for me, because usually my mind is always in the future, thinking about what I need to do next or what I didn't finish today.
I understand that so well, because my mind also jumps ahead. And even when I play guitar, sometimes I catch myself thinking about work or tomorrow's schedule instead of listening to the sound of the strings.
Does that make you frustrated?
Sometimes it does, but I try not to fight it too much, because if I get angry at myself for being distracted, then the hobby becomes stressful again, and that is the opposite of what I want.
That's a very mature way to see it, because many of us turn even relaxing activities into something serious and heavy.
I used to do that all the time, especially with sports, because I would start running to feel better, but then I would measure my speed, compare my distance with others, and suddenly I wasn't running for joy anymore.
That happens to me too when I try new hobbies, because at first everything feels light and fun, but after some time I start thinking about improvement, progress, and results.
I think that's connected to how we were raised, because from a young age we are taught to improve, to compete, to achieve, and it's hard to turn off that voice.
Yes, and that voice can be useful at work or in school, but in hobbies it can become too loud and steal the pleasure.
So how do you quiet that voice when you draw?
I don't always succeed, but I try to create small rituals, like making tea before I start, putting my phone in another room, and telling myself that this time is not for performance, but for exploration.
I love that word exploration because it feels open and curious instead of strict and demanding.
That's what I need, because when I treat drawing like exploration, I allow myself to experiment, to make mistakes, and to try things that might not work.
That reminds me of when I learned a new song recently, and I struggled with one part for many days. And instead of feeling embarrassed, I tried to enjoy the process of slowly getting better.
Did that feel different from before?
Yes, because before I would get impatient and maybe even stop practicing. But this time I told myself that the struggle is part of the music and that every wrong note is still a step forward.
That's beautiful, because it shows growth not only in skill, but in mindset.
I think hobbies teach us about patience in a gentle way because they are safe spaces to fail without big consequences.
That's true, and maybe that's why they are so important for adults, because we don't have many safe spaces to fail anymore.
At work, mistakes can feel very serious, and in relationships, misunderstandings can be painful. But in a hobby, a mistake is just a mistake.
And sometimes mistakes even create something interesting, like when I accidentally draw a line in the wrong place and it gives the picture more character.
That's such a good metaphor for life.
Maybe hobbies are small lessons about life, but without pressure, because they teach us resilience, patience, and self-compassion in a quiet way.
I agree. And I also think hobbies give us identity beyond our roles. Because when someone asks, "Who are you?" we often answer with our job. But hobbies remind us that we are more than that.
Yes, when I say I like drawing, it feels different from saying I work in this field, because it shows a personal side of me.
And that personal side is very important, especially in your 20s and 30s, when life can feel like a long list of responsibilities.
I remember a period when I felt very lost, even though on the outside everything looked fine. And I think part of that feeling came from ignoring the parts of me that needed creativity.
That must have been confusing.
It was, because I couldn't understand why I felt empty when I had a stable job and good friends. But now I see that I was missing something that gave me personal meaning.
Meaning is such a big word, but sometimes it comes from very small actions.
Yes, meaning can come from sitting quietly with a pencil for 30 minutes and feeling connected to yourself.
Or from playing a simple melody and feeling the vibration in your chest.
When you say that, it sounds almost spiritual.
Maybe it is, but not in a dramatic way, just in a human way, because we all need moments when we feel fully present and alive.
I think many people try to find that feeling in big changes, like moving to a new city or changing careers, but sometimes the answer is much closer.
Maybe it's in the corner of the room, like my guitar was.
Or in a drawer, like my sketchbook.
It's interesting how those objects can carry emotions, memories, and even a little bit of guilt.
Yes, and opening that drawer felt like opening a door to a part of me that I had ignored.
Did you ever feel afraid that if you started again, you might fail and feel disappointed?
Yes, I was afraid that I would realize I wasn't talented anymore, and that fear almost stopped me. But I learned that disappointment is lighter than regret.
That's such a strong sentence.
It's true for me, because if I try and it's not perfect, I can live with that. But if I never try, I always wonder, what if?
I feel the same way about music, because I don't want to look back in 10 years and see a guitar that I never touched again.
That image is powerful, and I think many listeners might have their own guitar in the corner, something waiting quietly.
And maybe the first step is not to become amazing at it, but simply to touch it again, even for a few minutes.
Yes, to reduce the distance between you and that hobby, because sometimes the distance feels bigger than it really is.
And when you close that distance, even a little, you start to feel something shift inside you.
I noticed that shift slowly, because after a few weeks of drawing regularly, even for short times, I felt more balanced, less irritated, and more patient in daily life.
That's such an important effect because hobbies don't only affect the moment when you are doing them, they also change how you move through the rest of your day.
Exactly. And I think that's something we often underestimate because we think hobbies are separate from real life, but they actually support real life.
They support our emotional health in ways that are quiet but powerful.
And maybe that's why we need to protect them, not as extra activities, but as essential parts of who we are.
When you say essential parts of who we are, it makes me think about how easily we can forget ourselves when we focus only on what we have to do. Because adulthood sometimes feels like a long road of responsibilities. And if we are not careful, we slowly leave behind the things that once made us feel alive.
Yes, and the strange thing is that we often don't notice it immediately because life still moves forward. We still wake up, go to work, meet people, and smile. But inside, there can be a quiet emptiness that grows little by little.
I remember that emptiness. And for a long time, I tried to fix it with big solutions, like planning trips, buying new things, or changing my routine. But none of those changes felt deep enough because what I really missed was something simple and personal.
Something that belonged only to you.
Exactly, because when I finally made space for my guitar again, not as a performance or a goal, but as a daily ritual, I started to feel more grounded, like I had roots again, instead of just running from one task to another.
I love that image of roots because hobbies can anchor us, especially in periods when everything feels unstable or uncertain.
And in our 20s and 30s, there are so many uncertainties, like career changes, relationships starting and ending, moving cities, and trying to understand who we really are.
That's so true. And I think hobbies can become small, safe places in the middle of all that change. Because even if everything else feels confusing, you can still sit down and draw, or play music, or cook something new.
It becomes a conversation with yourself, and that conversation can be very healing.
Yes, because when I draw now, I sometimes think about my day, about things that hurt me or made me happy, and the drawing becomes a way to process those emotions without forcing myself to explain them.
That's beautiful, because not everything needs words. And hobbies give us other languages, like colors, sounds, movements, or flavors.
I never thought of it like that, but you're right, because creativity is a language, and sometimes it speaks more honestly than we can with sentences.
And I think that's why hobbies can reduce stress, because they allow emotions to move instead of staying stuck inside us.
Yes, and I notice that on days when I draw, I sleep better because my mind feels lighter, like it released something during that quiet time.
That happens to me too after playing guitar, because even if the day was heavy, those few minutes of music make me feel that I did something just for my soul, not just for survival.
I love that phrase, not just for survival, because many adults are in survival mode without even realizing it.
Yes, and survival mode can make life feel gray, like you are only reacting to problems instead of creating something meaningful.
And hobbies bring color back, sometimes literally, like in my case with drawing.
And sometimes emotionally, like in my case with music.
Do you think hobbies also change how we see ourselves?
I do, because when I started playing again regularly, I stopped seeing myself only as a worker or a responsible adult, and I started seeing myself as someone who still has curiosity and passion.
That's powerful, because identity is not fixed, and hobbies remind us that we can still grow in new directions, even in our 30s or 40s.
Yes, and growth does not always mean promotions or big achievements. Sometimes growth means reconnecting with joy.
I wish more people understood that. Joy is not childish. It is necessary.
I agree, because joy gives energy. And when we have energy, we can handle responsibilities better.
That's something I learned slowly, because I used to think I had to finish all my work before I deserved to draw. But now I see that drawing actually helps me do my work with more focus and patience.
That shift is so important because it changes hobbies from rewards to support systems.
Exactly. And when we stop seeing them as rewards that we have to earn, we stop postponing them again and again. I would tell them to start very small and very gently, without pressure and without big expectations, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes, and to remember that they are not trying to impress anyone. They are just trying to reconnect with themselves.
That's such kind advice.
And what would you say?
I would say that it's never too late and that feeling awkward at the beginning is normal because starting again means being a beginner. And being a beginner is not a weakness. It is a sign of courage.
That's so true, because courage is not only about big decisions. Sometimes it's about opening an old drawer and picking up something you loved.
Or cleaning the dust from a guitar and playing a simple melody, even if your fingers feel stiff.
I like how our story started with small objects in a corner or in a drawer, because it shows that change does not always begin with dramatic moments. Sometimes it begins quietly.
And that quiet beginning can slowly transform how we feel about our entire life.
When I look at my drawings now, I don't see perfect art, but I see consistency. I see evenings when I chose myself, and that makes me proud.
That kind of pride is different from achievement pride. It's softer and deeper.
Yes, it feels warm instead of loud.
And I think that warmth is what many adults are missing, especially when life becomes too serious and structured.
Maybe hobbies are our way of protecting that warmth.
I like that idea because it makes hobbies feel less optional and more essential.
And maybe tonight, after listening to us, someone will look around their room and notice their own guitar in the corner, whatever that means for them.
And maybe they will touch it again, not to become the best, but to feel alive.
Because in the end, hobbies are not about skill, they are about connection.
Connection with ourselves, with our past, and with the parts of us that still want to explore.
And that connection can make everyday life softer, kinder, and more colorful.
I think that's a beautiful place to pause for today.
Yes, and we hope you give yourself permission to enjoy something small this week.
Just for you.
Just because you love it.